Have you ever wondered what really separates the nations that thrive from the ones that just tread water? It feels like a super complex question, right? But what if I told you there might be a hidden formula? Today, we're diving into a fascinating theory that maps out a very specific cycle, a series of steps that can either build incredible wealth or, well, lead to total decline. Okay, to kick things off, just look at this number. It's kind of mind-blowing. In a single hour, the entire country of Turkey, that's 83 million people, exports about $18 million worth of stuff. Now, in that exact same hour, one company, Apple, generates almost double that, a whopping $30 million. So the question is, how on earth is that possible? What's the secret sauce a company like Apple has? Well, according to economist Dursun Ali Yaz, the answer isn't just about a slick business plan. Nope. He believes it's all about a fundamental cycle that has dictated the rise and fall of civilizations for centuries. See, he argues that every society is on one of two tracks at any given time. You've got the civilization cycle, which is the path to progress and real wealth, and then you have its dark twin, the primitivism cycle, which is a one-way ticket to stagnation and decay. And these two are always in a tug-of-war. And here they are, laid out side by side. On the one hand, you have the civilization cycle, moving from ideas and questions towards real growth. And on the other, you have the primitivism cycle, which is a path of rigid thinking that just leads downhill. We're going to focus on that first path, because that's where the secret formula for wealth is hiding. So think of this civilization cycle like a machine with 6 big, interconnected gears. For this machine to actually work and push a society forward, all 6 of these gears have to be turning, and in the right order. If just one of them jams up, the entire system grinds to a halt. All right, so let's dig in. We'll start with the first 3 gears. Together, they make up this powerful engine that takes abstract ideas and turns them into real, tangible, world-changing stuff. It all begins with gear number 1, philosophy. And no, we're not just talking about old guys in togas. This is about a culture that actually encourages free thought, asking tough questions, and debating ideas. Societies that shut this down, they just don't move forward. I mean, think about it. Without the philosophical and mathematical minds in ancient India who came up with the concept of zero, the binary code that runs every single computer, every smartphone, or whole digital world, it just wouldn't exist. And you can see the chain reaction here perfectly, right? A culture of free inquiry, that's philosophy, is the spark that ignites scientific discovery. Then science becomes the fuel for all our technological breakthroughs. You just can't have the tech without the science, and you definitely can't have the science if you're not allowed to ask why and what if. So what happens when you get those first 3 gears turning together smoothly? Well, let's go back to Apple. A single company built on huge scientific and tech leaps, sitting on a cash pile of around $200 billion. That is the insane power of this engine of progress. But here's the thing, making all that money is really only half the story. A society can be rolling in cash and still be incredibly poor in all the ways that matter. And that brings us to the last 3 gears, which are all about how a society manages that wealth and turns it into something meaningful and lasting. Right, so once you have the money, you desperately need gear number 4, law. You know, they say capital is a coward. It makes sense, right? It runs away from instability, from corruption, from injustice. Money simply will not stick around where it isn't protected by a fair and predictable legal system. And this image is such a perfect way to picture it. In a developed legal system, the defense and the prosecution are on equal footing, in front of a neutral judge. But in an underdeveloped system, look at that. The judge and the prosecutor are literally sitting side by side, aligned against the defense. Now, which one of those rooms would you rather invest your life savings in? So you've got money and you have a legal system to protect it. Now comes the trickiest part, and this quote just nails it. Earning money is hard, for sure, but spending it wisely in a way that actually builds a better future, that's 10 times harder. And that is the job of the final gear, art and culture. Think of money as this raw, chaotic, powerful energy, like lightning. Art and culture are what tame that energy. They channel it away from just mindless spending and into things that actually enrich all of us. Museums, universities, new research, beautiful public spaces. Without this final gear, a country can be swimming in gold, like Portugal was back in the 16th century, and still end up in decline because they never learned how to turn all that cash into lasting wealth. So,
That's the path to progress. That's the formula. But what happens when a society turns its back on this cycle? Well, it doesn't just stand still. It enters a really dangerous downward spiral.
And this is that primitivism sickle. It starts when you replace philosophy with dogma, with rigid, unquestioning belief. Science gets pushed aside for empty speeches and superstitions. And then, instead of creating your own technology, you just import everything, which leads to massive debt. And when a society can no longer create anything of value and is drowning in debt, the final tragic stop on that train is often despotism. It's a pretty scary warning. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, this whole theory really challenges us to think about what value even means. And it makes a super important distinction between two words we use all the time.
First, there's being rich. This is just a person or society that stacks up cash. They hoard it, but they don't really do anything with it. They don't channel it into creating future value. And honestly, this is probably why just being rich can sometimes attract a lot of resentment.
But then there's being wealthy, and that is a whole different ballgame. A wealthy society doesn't just collect money, it uses its resources to keep the gears of civilization turning. It funds the arts, it supports science, it creates a cultural legacy that lasts for generations. Think of families like the Eczacıbaşı in Turkey, who are admired not just for being rich, but for being wealthy, for being true value creators.
And that leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. Not just for our countries, but for our own communities, and maybe even our own lives. Are we just focused on the short-term goal of building riches? Or are we playing the long game, trying to turn those gears to create real, true, lasting wealth?